Okay. When people are looking at Lucasfilm and where it's at right now, especially Lucasfilm, it certainly is a principle that applies to a lot of different studios, but I think more often than not, lately it has to do with Lucasfilm, and that's the best example that I can give. Um, I am going to mostly be talking about Kathleen Kennedy, which might not be something that's popular with somebody like Robert Meyer Burnett, let's say, but I'm going to put things into perspective as best I can. Before people say, hey, George Lucas is the one who put her into that position, well, he was also, uh, when, uh, when the Disney board was being examined and there was going to be a vote coming up to determine whether or not a couple of people who are more friendly to the audience and to making money. Um, George Lucas actually was one of the people who did speak up and at least somehow contribute a letter of support for Bob Iger. And regardless of what reason he did that, that was a problem. That means time to stop pointing to George Lucas as somebody who's going to save anything. Um, what happened, though, with Kathleen Kennedy is this: she doesn't necessarily like the kind of movie that Star Wars is and that the brand has become, and she certainly doesn't like the sort of people who statistically support Star Wars. What she had decided to do from the beginning, from the appointing of her Lucasfilm Story Group or any other things that she's done, um, she's decided to see how this looks for people at the at the party, at people at the her little clubs and little boards that she belongs to. Um, and to a certain extent, I think a lot of it was supported by Bob Iger as well. But ultimately, it's more a matter of look at what you're seeing in a Star Wars movie, and is that there for the fans, or is it there that was just imposed for Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk um, to get that kind of messaging across? That's all it is. It's nothing to do with what works for the story and what is the better thing to do. It has more to do with, hey, let's make sure um, the the message comes across. Let's make sure that um, it's saying this about women, it's saying that about maybe different sexual things, or it's saying something else about various racial issues or whatever they want to get across. None of it really matters. If there's a project that Kathleen Kennedy didn't happen to spend a lot of time on, it has a chance. Like the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. Um, and they were okay, they were fine. But she had spent a lot of time on um, the sequel trilogy, and that was something that none of us, very few of us, really liked. And I don't really care what the statistics and the polling have to say, where you get some people now saying that, oh, people under this age like the sequel trilogy and don't like the original trilogy or whatever the case may be. Hey, as far as I'm concerned, my own Star Wars fandom, for what it's worth, is the original trilogy, and then maybe the first and second season of Mandalorian. There'll be scenes, little moments that I like from any Star Wars movie, but ultimately those are the highlights for me. And I think there's a lot wrong with what has been done, and the wrong person was in charge, no doubt about it. Um, so that's really my 2 cents being added to, the story or the ordeal. I mean, maybe someday there will be books that are going to tell us what really happened with in no uncertain terms. Um, I don't necessarily know that, um, I don't necessarily know that we're getting it. I think there's a lot of these issues are clouded by, uh, you know, Trump supporters and that kind of thing, who also maybe have the right view um, about Star Wars and about Lucasfilm in general. I mean, you look at even the Willow sequel series. Sure, that did have some elements that I liked, and then it had some elements that I tolerated, like Kit having a kind of a story, a lesbian story arc that was more central to the movie than Willow himself. And if I have the time and I have the footage and whatever, I would love to just make my own fan cut, a 2 hour fan cut of the Willow sequel. And of course, it would probably wouldn't have as much of Kit in it. Um, so there's that. I mean, you'll see little things like the couple that lives in the woods. This included the lady who owns the soccer team and Ted Lasso and that kind of thing. Like she was in the latest Mission Impossible movie, that kind of thing. Well, that couple, that lesbian couple that lives in a log cabin or something in the middle of the woods. I think that was just there to show Kit this is what can happen, two women together, and it's realistic for them or whatever. It's also not necessarily a good Willow show. I don't know. Um, but for the most part, as soon as people know that's going on, you are losing some of the audience. Um, uh, Indiana Jones as well. I'm not really sure that. I think Harrison Ford is taking a lot of heat for what it actually became and what he asked for and that kind of thing. But I've got a sneaking suspicion that having Phoebe Waller-Bridge in it might have been a known problem with the movie. There's plenty of people in that movie that would have been great if they were featured a little bit longer. It's good that Sala is back in Young Indiana Jones. What was it, 5 or whatever? Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe there was no way they could have seen that everything everywhere all at once was going to break into the public consciousness, and that Kiwi Kwan was going to get an Oscar. Um, but but it still would have been interesting to see some kind of product with grown up short round. Why not? I don't see. I mean, he spoke directly to Kathleen Kennedy and asked for a show like that, and I think it probably would have gotten views. But there's a certain attitude that goes along with all of this. It's it's and it is something that is in the mind of a Kathleen Kennedy, and where she's only interested in sending out her message to people that she has to answer to on the proverbial playground of Hollywood in the um, her little I guess the term I'm looking for here is something like um, champagne socialist, that kind of thing, where that's essentially what they want. Just have your fun um, at your parties and you know, you don't get the feeling necessarily that when Mark Hamill got his star on the Walk of Fame and Kathleen Kennedy was in the audience, there's it may not have been just all friendly support. It might have just been a very political situation. I don't know. Kind of like when Mark Hamill is reined in and he's heard too many maybe conservatives say, "Hey, look what happened to Luke Skywalker, and it shouldn't have happened, and The Last Jedi was terrible," and that kind of thing. Um, so he ended up um, reneging on that, but he was right in the first place. And we do have those things on tape on YouTube. You can find it very easily. Um, so, I mean, it is, when you look at the kind of people that were chosen for the Lucasfilm story group, that was another thing, another major Kathleen Kennedy imposition of Star Wars. I think before we saw The Last Jedi, Ryan Johnson mentioned, "Oh, I don't really I don't write everything myself and just let it happen. I bounce things off of the Lucasfilm story group and so on and so forth." And so, hey, some of us initially thought, "Hey, well, Lucasfilm story group, that must be a dramaturgical dream team. What the heck? I mean, who would be in that group?" But it was only after we saw The Last Jedi that groups of fans did look up that list of people. Who's on the Lucasfilm story group? What was their background? And found it lacking. Like, what shows were this person? What shows were these people working on? And none of it was anything that really necessarily said, "Hey, this is good for Star Wars." Um, Even somebody like Pablo Hidalgo, who had been involved in Star Wars for a long time and writing books about vehicles and that kind of thing, um, has also proven in social media, especially, that he's not somebody to count on, and he shouldn't be on any kind of Lucasfilm story group. The fact of the matter is, there should not be a Lucasfilm story group at all. It should be gone. That's one of the first things that it should be cutting. If you want to save money at Disney, do it this way. I mean, there are going to be people on the Disney board who are beholding to Bob Iger, so maybe they're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to challenge necessarily what he has to say, and maybe they're not going to look at what's the more profitable thing to do or what's actually turning people off. And I think that's a major issue. It's something that we should be thinking about more than anything. Yeah, so Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk are part of it. I mean, it's great that Gina Carano finally won her her lawsuit. Some of us, maybe after the lawsuit started, might have been thinking, "Oh, geez, it's all thanks to Elon Musk." And maybe he's not the most popular person in the world. But anyway, it got done, and they have their things that they've been forced to say. But at the end of the day, it's still a matter of, we've had a few years now where maybe the Star Wars brand has been damaged beyond repair. Definitely, Mandalorian season 3 was not good. I mean, you might look at a moment like, you might look at elements of an episode from that. There's one that's directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. You can look through the cast. You can say, all right, Tim Meadows. I mean, who doesn't like Tim Meadows? But he's doesn't have a very weighty part in this episode. But and there's Christopher Lloyd. You can definitely see the Venn diagram of fandom for Christopher Lloyd and the Venn diagram for Star Wars overlapping. Great. You can look at Jack Black, and again, you can see that overlap of his fans and Star Wars fans. He kind of belongs. I mean, if they did a version of or a sequel to, Flash Gordon, the 1980 Flash Gordon, certainly it would be interesting to see him do the maybe the son of the Hawkman that Brian Blessed played in that show. At least when he's wearing a beard, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Get him in Hawkman guise and get him going there. Oh my God, I'm gonna blank. I can't believe I'm blanking this person's name, but the woman who played his wife on this episode, she was the queen of whatever world that was. I don't know, but she's, I guess, a singer, pop star, and that kind of thing. And she's mostly famous for wearing, clothes that don't really fit or whatever, and she's showing off some sexuality that she thinks she has. And I guess that she attracts some people who lean toward wokeness. I don't think that the sort of people that want to attack any singer for losing weight. I might think, oh, they're betraying something. They're not representing fatness or whatever. I don't know. I think that just strikes me as, false, woke mumbo jumbo. And that's really where she belongs. I don't see, a Venn diagram between her fans and Star Wars. I just don't see it. I'm sure it exists somewhere, and I'm sure somebody will make it up in some kind of poll that you're going to have to look at on the internet, whatever the case may be, a Facebook poll or something. I don't know, but that's typical of the kind of thing that you are getting in the third season of Mandalorian. I don't know if anybody on their staff, maybe Dave Filoni or somebody, you might be going through something either when he's saying maybe that um, uh, Katie Sackhoff's character should sit in the throne and stay in that throne until somebody walks up to them, and maybe they don't want to question exactly what she's doing in that throne anyway. I mean, is that really all you're supposed to do if you have some kind of power? You're going to sit now in the throne? I don't know. And then, it's difficult to really say what any of the characters were doing and why they were doing things. It was a big mistake to use up part of the Boba Fett show. I know all the shows were supposed to, at some point, according to Jon Favreau, have Gina Carano or Cara Dune as a connective tissue for all of the spinoffs. And then, of course, when Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk decided to get rid of and profane, defame Gina Carano, of course, that went away. And I didn't really even feel like watching the third season of Mandalorian. But I think one of the obvious problems that was left was this idea of they ended the finale of the second season with this good idea of finally delivering Grogu to Luke, and he's going to be trained and that kind of thing. I mean, certainly Luke could have said, "Hey, if you want to come by, I can make up a treehouse for you or something. You can have your own place, whatever." Um, but ultimately, it was a good idea to just not have Grogu anymore. But then you've got some people who might. I'm going to say, instead of saying Star Wars fans, I'll say people who identify as Star Wars fans, but they're really maybe only interested in Grogu, and so they would maybe be challenging or losing that audience if they left Grogu out of Mandalorian season 3. But that would have been a good idea. Then they'd have to challenge themselves. They'd have to say, okay, now what is this bounty hunter going to be doing with his life? Um, and I think there's actually some value in that. But ultimately, it does come down to the idea that no matter how you slice it, it is a matter of somebody like a Kathleen Kennedy, who might not mind um, some of the directors that she's worked with over the years. When she and her husband Frank Marshall would be credited as executive producers on something, we'd get used to seeing her name, and we don't necessarily have anything against her at that point. We'd see her even as a producer, whether it's for E.T. or for Schindler's List and that kind of thing. Still, at the end of the day, if you've got somebody who is competent in that job, which is a necessary thing, but as long as you have Steven Spielberg or Robert Zemeckis or whoever else is working on these things as the director doing it, you're going to have a decent show anyway. Now, for having her in charge of, I can see where maybe Spielberg decided not to be really involved in the new Indiana Jones. But maybe because it would have meant he's going to be answering to her in that very bizarre kind of position as a director when she's the president of Lucasfilm. I don't necessarily know that that's good. I think something was lost in, especially um, The Last Jedi. I mean, you've got somebody in Force Awakens. Luke Skywalker has said, "Oh, he's put together a couple of pieces of a map, and that is going to be the way to find him when the time is right." So Rey goes to find him, and then in the next movie, he's saying he just came to this island to die. That's all he wants to do. So then why leave maps? It's just so much nonsense. And I think after a while, you just get kind of sick of it. You might think, all right, yeah, in episode 9, okay, you've got Wedge, so that's a little thing for the fans. And finally, they reached out to Billy D. Williams, and they have him in there, and that's fine. Certainly, he's always welcome. But then, and luckily, thankfully, they just didn't bother to kill him off this time around. But for the most part, you can see why just a lot of it didn't make sense. There was the girl who was in episode 9 anyway, not Duel of the Fates by Colin Trevorrow, but the actual episode 9 that we got. There's a girl who, like Finn, left the Stormtrooper Order. Apparently, she had been kidnapped as a kid, and then the fan sites and some discussions let us know that apparently she is the daughter of Lando. And that's not really touched on in the movie. So you kind of wonder about that. And I mean, there's a lot of time where you're seeing a lot of flashy things on screen and a lot of um, sci-fi stuff and whatever else, and that's taking up some time. And maybe there are some other issues that could be talked about. Um, Somebody who, with all their Lucasfilm story group and everything else that they've got going, you can look at the fact that, hey, wait a second, um, we saw the Endor Death Star explode. We know what's left of it. Nothing. Nothing is left of it. And then you see that it somehow crashed. There was nothing really to crash in this movie. And you see sort of something in the water for it, or some kind of. It's just Ray has to take a boat across the water, and you know, and have her confrontations there with Kylo Ren. But I mean, there should be nothing left. There should be side, little specks left over, embers that are left over from the old Death Star. And even if there was a chunk or chunks that big that were hitting the ground or hitting the water, you have to wonder. I mean, J.J. Abrams himself was the credited writer um, uh, for Armageddon, and that talks a little bit about what's going to happen if a chunk the size of Texas hits the ground. And it doesn't look like that really happened to that particular culture or that particular planet. So right away, there's all this nonsense, and it's not worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth having it in your mind. It's not worth having. People will talk about politicians who are living rent free in our heads or whatever. It's probably not worth having certain movies in our heads either. And it's not really positive for cinema ultimately. I mean, right now, I don't know that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be excited about whatever is coming down the road for Star Wars fans in movie theaters. It might be a waste of time. I mean, sure, this Starfighter thing has Sigourney Weaver in it, and that kind of thing. That's a good choice there, but I can't really. But then it takes place after Episode 9, a time when, so it's almost backing up the fact that the sequel trilogy exists, and I'm not really cool with it. I don't think it should exist. I think we should have somebody go through the world between worlds and change something that makes it impossible for that trilogy to happen. But that's about it. I mean, most of it is, when you think about it too, whenever Kathleen Kennedy says that she's going to retire, or a lot of other people are saying she's going to retire from Lucasfilm, we're not saying from film in general, I don't know. The only real issue is getting her the hell out of Lucasfilm. But also, it isn't as if there's a standard that has to be kept, and where she has to make sure that she's hiring all the right people to be to take over, and so that they can keep up the same narrative approach that they have all along. Because, quite frankly, the only way Star Wars has really a chance is not only getting her the hell out, but getting out anyone that she has following her, anyone who is taking on her particular philosophy about movies, their philosophy about any issue. I mean, the reality is you can have someone like myself who has moderate views, left of center views. And I don't really have any respect for extremes. Like on the one end, MAGA, don't have respect for that. And on the other end, wokeness, I don't have any respect for that either. I don't think that there are plenty of people who are going to say, all right, I'm not, um, woke at all, but I care about things. There are certainly issues that I care about. Um, but I don't like bullshit. I have no real respect for that at all. And and certainly Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk have more than enough BS being thrown into our faces at any given time. Um, First of all, you do have to get rid of the Lucasfilm Story Group. Absolutely. You have to get rid of people who are loyal to, to Bob and his board of directors. Everybody has to be gone. They have to get people in there who are going to be more interested in contributing to the movies. And it's people who actually did like Star Wars in the first place. Not people who are necessarily saying, oh, well, you know what this needs? It needs this. It needs more female characters. It needs a gay character. It needs this. So you want to appease all these different interest groups. I'm only interested in people really trying to appease the Star Wars fans and themselves and Star Wars itself, which is even a bigger thing now than George Lucas in a sense. I am not a fan really of the prequel trilogy, to be honest with you. There are elements of it that were fine, but I don't think we needed to see young Anakin Skywalker's Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi. Sebastian Shaw was the person he should have been. You're not changing Sebastian Shaw's actual face when the helmet comes off, So I don't really get the point of that whole thing. George Lucas might want to put a lot of prequel stuff into the original trilogy, of course, because that's something that he directed anyway. But myself, I don't want to ever see that. I can see people walking away from it, walking away from Star Wars entirely. I mean, I might spend just as much time looking at, say, Dexter or something, whether you have any fandom, whether you're a Dexter fan or a Star Wars fan, when they come together, there are going to be arguments, for sure. And we're not going to appease everybody. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about Kathleen Kennedy for now. It's probably not the only thing I'm going to say about her, but it is this time.